Hey, I am Naya. Welcome back to the channel. So today we're doing like a part 2 basically of last week's video because I figured, we only scratched the surface of rulings and interactions and things to be mindful of. So I came up with like a huge list of just random interactions that you should be mindful of and also that apply to this particular meta we're in right now. So yeah, stick around. Alright, so the first interaction is going to be how you can outplay your opponent if you're the tri-brigade player and they activate Red Eyes Fusion, which some of them don't realize how chain links will actually resolve backwards. So what you can do is, if they activate Red Eyes Fusion, you just chain revolt at this very second. Just chain it, just do. And then you summon all 4 of them back, obviously summon Omen. But then they need to resolve Red Eyes Fusion first. So they're gonna put the Dragoon on board, send the materials, do everything. And then you can arrange your chain links as, for example, 1 Omen, 2 Norvo, 3 Kit. So they can only respond to the Kit and you just effectively banish their Dragoon without them even having anything to do about it because you chained to Red Eyes Fusion. Alright, so the next one is a bit more, I guess, complicated to explain. It's pretty basic, but I'll try to explain it as best as I can. So it's all about priority on resolution of things. Now this sounds weird, but I'll explain it to you with the example of all of our beloved Meltdown because it will explain this in the best way possible. So if you're the invoked player or the IES player, whatever, and you activate this, well, this is the gist of it. If you activate, for example, Shadow Fusion, and you resolve all of your effects on resolution, your opponent cannot respond, which is obvious. Oh, this is just setting up. Alright, so here's the Frigid, because we need to make Shadow Fusion live. So you activate Shadow Fusion, you send the materials, you summon, for example, Apcalone, and they cannot respond when you build your chain. So like Apcalone 1, Wendy 2, Dragon 3, for example. You pop their stuff, and then on resolution of that, they have the opportunity to activate something because this is the resolution of the chain that you decided to build after your monster was summoned. So they can activate Revolt, for example, which here I remember I forgot to banish something. Yeah, for the Revolt to actually be live. So they can activate Revolt and everything's legal. It's actually on the resolution. However, there is an instance where you as the turn player actually have priority on summon without them having the opportunity to activate their fast effects at all before you commit your action. Okay, so this is the other one which I was talking about. If you activate, for example, Invocation right here, and you summon Mekaba. Now, a summon itself does not start a chain. So if you decide that right here, you don't wish to activate any fast effects, you as the turn player can play the next action because the game state will return to open before your opponent has a chance to activate any fast effects. And this is gonna sound weird, but basically why this is because in the previous example, we activated things on summon, and then your opponent had the chance to activate things on the resolution of your chain. But right here, we decided to not activate anything, so you cannot effectively activate something on resolution of a resolution, if that makes sense. Basically, a summon does not start a chain, so they cannot respond to that as a resolution of something because the game state will immediately go back to open if you decide to not activate any fast effects. Now, I realize this makes Meltdown even more busted, I guess. But yeah, for example, you can go Invocation effect, return Alistair, do everything, and they cannot do anything. And then later on, they can activate, for example, their set Revolt on the resolution of your Invocation effect in Grave. So I guess this is something to remember as well. Alright, so the next one is basically, when do cards meet their trigger conditions either in hand or in grave or on field? Because this differs from, not card to card, but from location to location, basically. So, for example, we all know, if you go Sanit Mining, discard Spinny, add Gazelle, you can special Gazelle. Something else to note is if you have, for example, multiple trigger effects from hand, like Sea Archiver, like Gazelle, you cannot just, it's how it is, basically, you cannot put them together. You cannot activate both, even if Gazelle, for example, is in hand and Sea Archiver, for example, is in grave. They are in different locations, but for the rule, it's how it is. Like I said, you cannot activate both of them. So this is like a bonus tip, I guess. Now, the other thing I wanted to discuss was this replay I prepared for you, and also one other interaction. So for example, right over here, if you go Tracer Effect, you pop Striker Dragon to summon Recharger from deck. Recharger cannot activate to summon something from the graveyard because it was not there to see the actual destruction of Striker Dragon. Now I know this, explaining it in terms like it wasn't here to see it sounds weird, but it's just like previously with Gazelle and Sea Archiver, it's just how it is. If cards are not in grave or on field to meet their trigger conditions physically, when the activation happened, they cannot activate in the next available chain. So similar example is, for example, if you go Virtual World Effect, send Neon, you cannot activate Neon because it wasn't physically in the graveyard to see the virtual being summoned. Like I said, it sounds weird, but it's an important interaction to know because some cards can activate, like Darkest Diabolos, like Gazelle, things like that. But right here, for example, you could easily get cheated if someone does this on purpose, hopefully not, or just doesn't know that Recharger, which is like, very important for the Dragon Link deck, they cannot do this kind of play. Okay, so the next couple of ones, we're just going to be throwing them out there, no replays, it's just, back-to-back different interactions and things to note. So number one is going to be, you can, if for example, you run Zodiacs in tri-brigade sale or something like that, pitch a Zodiac as cost if you have Ram. For example, and this again, like mentioned in the previous video, please go watch the tri-brigade deck profile. This interaction is explained very well in here, in there. But basically pitch something as cost if you have Ram, because later on Ram will maybe be able to revive it. So why not put a resource in grave if you can do it? For example, go Twin Twisters, discard something. Later on with Ram, you have another body in the graveyard. Also a legal target for Chalkanine, which also works. So yeah, the other one is under Dimensional Fissure, materials will go to the graveyard because they are monster cards, but they are not considered as monster cards for the effect of defissure. It's basically the difference between how the game recognizes something. For example, if something is an equip spell, but it's a monster, the game still realizes this is a monster card, but right now it's a spell. And similarly to that, under defissure, this is just a material and it's gonna get sent to the graveyard because the game at that point does not care whether or not this was a monster or not. So materials will not go to the banish pile. The next one is going to be an extra deck monster being summoned from the graveyard can beat over Ecclesia. Now I've done this to people. I would like revive something with Rocket Ride or something. No, not with Rocket Ride because it cannot attack. But yes, I would revive something with Washer, for example, and I would attack over Ecclesia and people would just chill there like, okay. they don't comprehend that it's going to be destroyed because it is an extra deck monster, but it wasn't summoned from the extra deck, it was summoned from the graveyard, so it can beat over Ecclesia. The next one is gonna be Malicious in Virtual World can be recycled by Neon. So you can effectively go Malicious effect, banish itself, summon Malicious, Malicious goes to grave, Neon effect, recycle Malicious, and do the entire circle again if you want. And the next one is just gonna be draw logs both of you. I know this sounds weird, like why would you say that? But it happens. You would draw someone and then try to resolve like a Nerval or something because it's just natural to you. But you cannot draw logs both of you, so just keep that in mind. And then just a very quick one also, Almirage only protects from opponent's card effects. Now, I was guilty of that. I wanted to like do a big brain play and I went Torrential and try to protect my own, what was it, Fractal or something with Almirage. And then I bothered to read it and I was like, oh, I cannot do that. Okay. So yeah, it only prevents from opponent's card effects. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so before we start the next one, I just want to mention, like, if you're able to hear my fridge in any of my videos, I apologize for that. For almost all of the videos, I would turn it off. But then I started feeling like, is this gonna damage it? I don't know. I don't want to risk it. I guess, yeah, if you hear it, it's just here. It's making noises, but hopefully it doesn't bother anyone. So now that this is out of the way, this interaction, I think, is one of the most important ones of this video because it's such a good tip, basically. It's something that I try to go by if I'm facing a tri-brigade player. So just Veiler their stuff on normal summon if you have a monster. So, for example, the normal summon kit, if you activate Veiler immediately, it's negated, it's great, it's fine. Now, maybe you can be a little, wary of that because they still have the things in the graveyard if they have any other extenders. But if you do not Veiler them, they can just go, okay, so normal summon. You should Veiler. If you don't, they can just go kit effect, banish for cost, then you Veiler, and they can chain Droplet. And it's so, so, so important to play around Droplet in this kind of situation because they just send the kit away as cost, negate your Macabre. So they did two things. Their kit resolved, actually three. Their kit resolved, you lost a card from hand, so you hand looped yourself, and they negated your monster. So just play around Droplet. If you feel like your opponent might have it, if you can tell, I don't know, but just maybe play around it anyway. And just Veiler on normal summon. And I think you're going to be very grateful. All right, so now we're going to go a bit more back-to-back ones, a couple more replays. So then we're done. So if you're still watching, thank you. Consider liking, consider subbing. So let's go. Now, one of them is going to be Omen and Ferjit. They can both, Omen searches a tri-type and Ferjit summons a tri-type. So it's not just a tri-brigade. So consider searching for like a rescue cat with Omen if you feel like you need it for a Keras discard, or if it's just dead in your deck, or just summon something with Ferjit that you might need. Doesn't have to be a tri-brigade. All right, the next one is going to be Herald of Arclight, or basically cards that prevent you from sending things to the graveyard as cost because they would get banished, essentially. So if you go Droplet, you cannot send monster cards as cost because Herald prevents it. So you can just send spells or traps, for example, or monster cards from the field, but they cannot be as cost from hand. The next one is going to be Gamma. Gamma checks on end phase, which is every single end phase. So if you Lancia your opponent and you Gamma your opponent, it's gonna stay on your board, but then you immediately need to do something with it. Go into Omega, go into, I don't know, Chaos Ruler, whatever, but get it off of the field because it is going to check in your end phase as well and attempt to get banished. Now the next one is going to be Abkalon. If it returns a card to the extra deck, which it can do, for example, Winda, Construct, whatever, you don't need to discard a card because a card must be returned to the hand for the other part of the effect to apply, so you don't need to discard. And now Retaliating Sea actually searches Contact Sea. If you decide to run both of them for whichever reason, or if you're just an insect player, it can search it. And then the last one is going to be under Contact Sea, you are allowed to activate tri-brigade effects because you're not using monsters for the link summon, but you're just special summoning link monsters. So yeah, it works under Contact Sea, so which is kind of busted if you ask me. And then now we have a couple more replays. So this one is going to be how you can play around IDP in Eldritch, which is, I guess, kind of old, but I feel like why not included? If your opponent activates IDP, so Ice Dragon's Prison, you can just chain your Hakaro if you have it, summon, and banish your own Gold Lord, because this was the target for IDP, obviously, and because IDP says that you need to special summon it, and then you can banish both of them, since the target is not there anymore, it just goes to grave. You don't special summon anything, and effectively you don't banish the other Lord. Okay, so we have come to the last one, and I decided to prepare a replay with dinos and how Fogblade affects them, since PKs are probably gonna gain popularity and it's something that it's important to note. So if you go Oviraptor effect and your opponent activates Fogblade, if right here, for whichever reason you decide to chain Miscellaneous Earth, now it's not for whichever reason, it's maybe because you think it's how it works, it does not work like this. Because Misk prevents your dinos, he protects them basically from activated effects, and Fogblade is just a continuous trap that affects Soul Eating Oviraptor, so it's not an activated effect. And right here you activate Misk, great, that's it. You just threw a Misk in the graveyard and that's it. Oviraptor is still going to get negated because Fogblade is not an activated effect. All right, and that's it. Now, if you want any more videos like this, I would gladly make them, like I mentioned in the previous one, because I truly take a huge interest in rulings, in interaction, in anything of the sort. So if you would like that kind of content, I'd be happy to produce it. But other than that, make sure to like, make sure to sub, and check out Twitch as always, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.